collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up on the programme this week, we'll hear about the European Union's new strategy for plastics.
The problem of plastics is really getting out of hand. We produce an enormous amount of plastic waste, 25 million tons every year. And unfortunately, only 30% of that is currently being recycled.
Cases of measles on the island have led to a call for people to ensure their children are properly vaccinated.
It's for all basic children vaccinations, including hepatitis B, tetanus, diphtheria, polio, pertussis, Haemophilus influenza type B, and meningococcal C disease.
And with a baby monk seal sighted in Paphos harbour this week, we talk about the biodiversity in our seas.
If you go to the areas where we have desalination plants, the sea is dead. Because you get all these salt, the brine that actually returns back to the water, the area is dead.
And we meet the Bulgarian ambassador to Nicosia as Bulgaria takes over the helm of the EU Council.
It is very important, of course, this is the main priority, the Western Balkans, the digital economy, also youth employment.
The first ever Europe-wide strategy on plastics was adopted recently, called Plastic Waste, a European strategy to protect the planet, defend our citizens and empower our industries. We're joined now by the head of press at the European Commission representation in Cyprus, Babis Metaxas, to tell us what it means and how it's going to affect us. So what is the main pillar of this new idea?
The main pillar is to have all plastic packaging in the European Union recyclable or biodegradable by 2030. This is, in one line, what this aims for. The reason we are doing that is because the problem of plastics is really getting out of hand. We produce an enormous amount of plastic waste, 25 million tons every year. And unfortunately, only 30% of that is currently being recycled.
Well, that's because some plastics simply can't be recycled or else are so difficult to recycle that people just throw them away instead of spending the money it would take. Wouldn't it be easier to just ban those plastics that are not recyclable?
But this is what will happen by 2030. By 2030, every plastic item that is being produced in the European Union will have to be recyclable. I mean, it will not happen overnight. It will happen over a period of, 12 years in effect. But we think this is a realistic target and at the same time an ambitious target. But this is exactly what we're planning to do, to have everything recyclable and biodegradable.
Now, I've got to come to the biodegradable bit because it's quite common knowledge, I think, that plastic does not biodegrade. All it does is become the microplastic, which is actually a huge problem in the oceans, and that's what's killing seabirds, killing fish, and so on and so forth. And apparently now the latest thought is that through those fish and whatever else, it's entering the human food chain. And you and I have probably got microplastics in our bloodstreams. So the biodegradable bit surely needs to be looked at again.
You're right about the problems posed by microplastics, but we think technology is going to be working for us in this respect in the future, because the aim is to design products that are truly biodegradable, that are truly recyclable, and to do that, we have to set targets in terms of collecting the waste, producing the facilities to recycle it, but actually changing the composition of the actual materials.
And also changing people's propensity for using plastic to the extent that they do, simply because it's convenient.
Absolutely, and there are several ways. I mean, this is the first time we are setting at the European level a definite target with an end date and the means to get there. But at the same time, several countries have been taking measures all along in order to reduce the amount of plastics being used. I mean, the obvious example is plastic bags. We have now brought in charges for plastic bags all across the Union. Now, some countries do it slower than others. In Cyprus, it has been formally adopted, but it will start being enforced as of July. Lithuania, for example, will do it later, at the end of 2018, 31st of December. But at the same time, there are countries like, Ireland springs to mind, which first brought a charge on plastic bags, and the hefty one at 15 cents back in 2002, and then raised it in 2007 to 22 cents. Other countries have gone down a slightly different route by taxing the retailers for the use of plastic bags, which encourages the retailer not to give them out. And the conclusion of all that is that everything works. I mean, where measures have been taken, there have been noticeable reductions.
Reductions. Why don't we just do what Kenya did and ban them?
One reason why we can't do that straight away is that the plastics industry is a very important component of the European economy. I mean, it currently employs 1.5 million people and generates a turnover of well over 300 billion a year. Now, what we are saying, we can't just cross this out. What we are saying is that we will be encouraging through several means, as part of this strategy, the industry to change, to become more environment friendly, to move towards technologies that do not harm the environment as much as the current plastics. And in the process, we also think that this will be good for the industry and good for the economy in general, because the research and innovation that will need to go into this, the change in production processes, we expect that it will create an additional 200,000 jobs in that particular industry, which I think it's a win-win situation. We will have much better control of the amount of waste being generated and how it is disposed of, and at the same time we are not going to harm the industry and the livelihoods of the people who depend on it.
And that's Babis Metaxas from the European Commission representation in Cyprus, talking to us about the new European strategy on plastic waste.
You can subscribe to the Cyprus News Digest on iTunes for free and get the program downloaded to your phone or tablet so you can listen anytime, anywhere.
In the news this week, we heard that there have been cases of measles on the island, and apparently they probably came from other European countries. Now, most of us might have thought that measles, like polio, was something of the past, but it is highly contagious, and so we're joined today by the head of the Health Ministry's Infectious Diseases Monitoring Unit, Dr. Maria Kouliou, to talk about what should be done and how dangerous is measles. So, Maria, it can actually kill, can't it?
Yes, measles can be very dangerous, especially for the immunocompromised individuals, but it can also cause severe symptoms such as encephalitis even in healthy people that get the disease. So measles is a disease that we would like to eradicate if possible.
And I thought it had all but been eradicated, but I think the problem is the take-up in some places of the vaccinations, isn't it? Now, how far is that due to the scare that we had about the MMR a few years ago and the possible links to autism? Have you seen a decline in parents vaccinating their children?
If you're talking about Cyprus, no, we haven't had a decline. I would say we have an increase in vaccination coverage. During the last survey that the Ministry of Health did in Cyprus, that was done in May 2015, and there will be another one this year. We do it every 3 years, and it shows that our vaccination coverage is not bad, it's quite good. And I think this thing is also proved by the fact that we also had imported cases last year. We had 3 cases imported again one from Bulgaria and the 2 from Romania. And fortunately, again, we did not have any secondary cases. So it was not transmitted to local population, which shows that the vaccination protection is quite good. However,
when you say quite good, do you have a percentage on how many people, for example, are not vaccinated? Because total eradication can't happen when there's the possibility of one person catching it, can you?
You are right. The ideal immunization coverage, according to the WHO, is 95% of the population for both doses of MMR vaccine, but it has to be across all population groups. And that means that it's not enough to have an overall percentage of 95% or above, but it's also important not to have any poaches of unvaccinated people. For example, in Netherlands, they have over 95% of vaccination coverage, but every year they have hundreds of people suffering measles disease because they have poaches of people who do not wish to be vaccinated.
Right.
Philosophically, again.
What about the older generation? Because the MMR vaccine came in not so very long ago, really, in medical terms, and there must be quite a lot of elderly people in Cyprus who never had the vaccination. Can you vaccinate them as well?
There is no need, because most of them have already suffered the disease. For example, the vaccination in Cyprus came in 1962, but the population did not have a good coverage rate until the 70s, I would say. So all people born before the 70s have suffered, or nearly all the people born before the 70s. So I wouldn't say we need to vaccinate these people, and we do not see any cases in these people.
So once they've had the disease, they've in effect got the immunity?
Yes, the disease offers excellent protection. The thing is that you might have complications if you are not vaccinated and you've suffered the disease. That's a problem.
So 2 cases at the moment, and what does the health ministry do when you've got cases like this? I think luckily that both the children involved have recovered, I believe.
Yes, both children have recovered, even if one of them had a severe keratitis, but they recovered eventually. Actually, when you have these kind of cases, the doctors usually call us from when they suspect a case. This is the guidance we give the doctors, and we try to speed up the diagnosis at the laboratory level. And whenever it's diagnosed, then we take care that we follow up, actually, we monitor the cases and see whether you have any secondary cases. And of course, we take prevention measures even from the stage of suspicion. We ask the parents not to go out, for the children not to go out and make other people exposed to the disease. So it's a prevention on the level of the population, and also the monitoring of whether you have any secondary cases in the community. And of course, if they need hospitalization, of course we can offer it. These 2 cases, they are just imported cases, so we are not considered to have measles outbreak on the island. It's, however, important to prevent these cases from being transmitted, because if they transmit to the locals, then we will call it an outbreak. Now it's not an outbreak.
What about how this spreads? Because a lot of people, because it's been almost eradicated, think of it as something, as I said earlier, that was in the past. How does measles spread from one person to another?
Measles is one of the most contagious diseases. They are spread by aerosols, not just droplets, but by droplet nuclei, and they are extremely contagious. It's one of the most contagious diseases.
So if you're in a bus with somebody who's got measles, chances are you might be breathing in the air.
Yes, especially if you are sitting next to that person. So the only valid way of protecting yourself is the vaccination.
Right, and the government, I think, has vaccination clinics across the island where, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the measles vaccination is given for free. So where can they find out, if they haven't had their kids vaccinated, where they should go?
Okay. In Cyprus, indeed, we have the walk-in vaccination centres, the state vaccination centres. For children, there are about 63 vaccination centres in all Cyprus. We have the main ones are based on the main hospitals in every district, but there are others that are based in smaller communities. It's very easy to find them, actually. And in addition, we have the vaccination centres for adults. We have one in each district, which are based again at the main hospitals.
Right, now I did read reports in the press that because of the seriousness of this sort of thing, that no identification is required from people who go for a vaccination, because I would also imagine that possibly some people who might be on the island illegally wouldn't like to go and be asked all these questions.
Exactly.
Do you find that it is very often third country nationals or people from other European countries where the take-up is lower that tend to be the most at risk?
What you say is correct. Because our rationale behind these walk-in completely free centres is to immunize all residents on the island if possible. Indeed, the bureaucracy is very, very... There is no bureaucracy, actually. You can go there and without significant, you don't need to show a passport, you don't need to show identification cards, and then you can vaccinate your children, especially for catching the illegals and the other people, because, as you know, the disease doesn't know borders and doesn't know legacy and no legal people. So in order to attract all these people, we leave it completely free.
And is that just for measles or for other vaccinations as well?
It's for all basic children vaccinations, including hepatitis B, tetanus, diphtheria, polio, pertussis, Haemophilus influenza type B, and meningococcal C disease.
So it pretty well covers any child who possibly came from a country where this isn't routine.
Yes, of course. And additionally, the pneumococcal vaccine. Yes, that's the other one. Yes, the reason is actually our target is to fully vaccinate a child free of charge. And of course, there are a few more vaccines that are done in the private sector, where the parents are guided at these public immunization centers, and they are told that these vaccines are not done here, and you can do it at a pediatrician that you wish to go.
Well, there you are. So it looks like everything is under control in terms of a measles outbreak on the island. Just 2 cases so far, but if your kids haven't been vaccinated, go and find at your nearest hospital where the walk-in centre is. And that was the head of the Health Ministry's Infectious Diseases Monitoring Unit, who's also acting director of the paediatric clinic of Makarios Hospital in Nicosia, Dr. Maria Koliou.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Well, there was great excitement in the Paphos area earlier this week because a baby monk seal was spotted in the harbour. All very exciting, you might think, but unfortunately there was an SOS issued pretty quickly afterwards by the Fisheries Department of the Ministry of Environment, because it appears that monk seals, which are, of course, highly endangered and pretty rare around Cyprus. We do have seals, but not too many monk seals. But if they're babies, as this one was, it needed to be with its mother, and this one wasn't. Vamos Theobemtu, posted it on his Facebook page. Vamos, bring us up to date a little bit. I think baby seals, until they're 2 or 3 months old, they do need to nurse from their mothers, and there was a fear that this one would die if it wasn't rescued and maybe united with its mother. But can you bottle feed a baby seal? I don't know. What will we try to do?
The idea is that we want to find the seal, and because it was seen in the Paphos area by swimmers, it's a very small seal. They took pictures from what I understand, and when the fishery department was notified and they saw it, they discovered that this is a baby monk seal that needs to be with its mother, because otherwise it will die. So this is the reason why they issued all these warnings, and they're asking people if they see anything to let us know, because otherwise the baby seal will actually die.
Do we have a time frame on how quickly it might die, or how much time there is to try and locate it and possibly its mother?
No, I don't know any details about this, but I know that the campaign is running all over the area. And we have people that were actually doing searches to actually find it. The difficulty here is that we have seals, as you said before, and one doesn't know whether the seal that they see is this or the other one, because sometimes they pop their head in the sea and they see around without moving, and you cannot tell whether this is a baby or not. And I know that people are actually looking for this seal. We have seals, as you said before, that they appear, for instance, in the Yanaba area. We have a lot of them in the Carpathia area, in the occupied area. And we have seals, for instance, in Limassol, that they appear. And therefore, we see them coming back. Some people say it's good. Some people say, are they coming to the shores because we have problem in finding food? I mean, why are we doing this? And this is something that I know the Fisheries Department was thinking to actually do a search and do a study about this in our seas. They did a study a year ago about this type of fish, and the mammals in particular, but I don't know about this particular monk seal. What is now the latest news about it?
Yeah, because I'd read that we have just a handful of them possibly around Cyprus. Most of them, I think, live nearer to Greece. But if we look at the whole biodiversity issue around the island of Cyprus, what, in your opinion, is the latest on that? We had that problem, of course, with those fish coming through the Suez Canal, which everybody was very worried about. The whole composition, if you like, of the wildlife in our seas is changing, isn't it?
Yes, we had this problem with the fish, that they're poisonous and they attack other fish as well, that came from the Suez Canal. Now we have another invasive species that is everywhere. It's tropical fish, good-looking tropical fish, with all these spikes around it. And I can tell you that an expedition was organized and they went to dive to take 2 or 3 samples, and they were thinking that they wouldn't be able to find samples, and they actually found so many fish that they were scared about the great numbers that we didn't calculate that we had so many of these fish in our shores.
So they'll be having an impact on the
yes.
fish that we've been used to for years.
Yes, and you get fish in our area from the Suez Canal. And another thing that we used to have, and it's only now that we are going to pass the law, is that, sometimes when a ship comes to port, they empty a certain amount of water that they use for ballast. And if a ship starts, for instance, in China, and they fill up the ballast water and they get crabs and stuff like that, and you go to port and you empty the ballast, automatically you deposit in that port life that you collected from the other port thousands of kilometers away. So this is the ballast water. And in Cyprus we didn't have a law about this. So if you go, for instance, somebody was telling me, if you go to ports like, for instance, in Rotterdam, and you see all kind of fish and species coming from other seas around, because it's a busy port. If you go to busy ports anywhere in the world, you'll see species from the other parts of the world because of that, of the ballast water.
But what effect does that have? Does it have a greater effect, for example, because the Mediterranean is, if you like, a sort of closed sea almost, whereas if you're in Rotterdam, I mean, you've got much more, let's say, violent seas which will disperse these species.
Yes, of course, it's the temperatures as well in the water. Here we call them invasive species because they survive over the other species, of the local species. So they fight for food and they win. And this is why you get so many of these and so many smaller numbers of the native species of fish.
What impact has it had on the fishing industry?
The fishing industry is claiming that every year they have to go in deep sea waters and further out in order to get fish. I was talking to a fisherman. He was telling me in the early years, 1980s, they will stand on the shore and they will see the fish in the water. They didn't have to go far to get. Now they get further and further and further to actually find fish.
Let's go back to where we started, the attitude of our fishermen to the seals being there, because of course they eat fish.
They eat fish. We have a problem with that, and not only the seals, but also with dolphins. I know that the government has for many years a certain fund that they give out to fishermen about the nets if they get damaged and everything. But I don't see any problem with traditional fishermen with seals. The problem with the seals is with the fishermen that actually stand to shore and do angling with the rod. Because you see these seals, they live near the coast, and they see the seals as their enemy, that is eating the fish they're trying to fish. So the problem I heard up to now is anglers. It's with anglers.
But they can't actually do anything to hurt a seal, can they?
You can, if you like. You can. You can shoot them, you can kill them with a piece of wood or throw rocks.
Okay.
And find a nest, because they usually stay around a specific area when they have small kids.
So have we had any incidents, though, do we know, of local people actually either bludgeoning baby seals, like we see they do in Canada, of course, every year when they cull them? But is there a problem here, or is it very
I heard a
isolated?
story that some people were actually planning to do this, but because they talked to the wrong, in inverted commas, the wrong people, they actually managed to get before them and stop them. But this is the fight that you get. Also, I need to explain to people the other problems that we have here with the species that we have in our seas with regards to water and desalination. If you go to the areas where we have desalination plants, the sea is dead. In the Kelja, for instance, or in Episcopi, because you get all these salt, the brine that actually returns back to the water, the area is dead. And the more water you desalinate, the more brine you send back to the waters.
So the larger the area.
Yes, the larger the area. And after many years of operations, for instance, a place like the Kelja, I was called by the local authorities there, and I talked to fishermen. There's nothing there. And they used to, it was a good fishing ground near the desalination plant. Now there's nothing. And there is absolutely nothing because the water is so saline that nothing can live in it.
Which just goes to show that without the proper planning and forward thinking, almost everything we do has an impact on our environment. That was Bambos Theobemtou, former Commissioner for the Environment of the Republic of Cyprus and now an MP with the Green Party. Bulgaria has assumed the presidency of the European Council. And earlier this week I met with the ambassador of Bulgaria to Nicosia, Christo Georgiev, who explained the priorities of the Bulgarian presidency.
The three pillars of the Bulgarian presidency program are stability, security and solidarity. We plan to achieve these goals by implementing three key principles: consensus, competitiveness, cohesion. We work on four main strands. The first, economic growth, social cohesion and TIOS. The second, security and stability for a stronger and united Europe. The third, the European perspective of the Western Balkans. And last, the fourth, the digital economy and skills of the future.
And of course that last one is very much connected with youth, because youth employment is very much connected to digital skills and the digital economy, and of course economic growth.
Of course, you are completely right. And we took over this dossier from the Estonian presidency. Of course, it was not possible to close the dossier during the Estonian presidency. And there is no doubt that our future is digital, and we all need to adapt to the new realities.
I know that one of the things you said in your presentation was about the enlargement of the European Union and the very great importance that you put to how the Western Balkan countries become more connected, particularly I think you were talking about energy and education and transport. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Unfortunately, because of the historic development, the countries in Southeast Europe are not very well connected. I know this by my own experience. That's why we work towards interconnectivity within the Southeast European region, including the Western Balkans, but also to connect the Western Balkans with Europe. It is very important, not only for economic reasons, not only for political reasons, but it is important for to create and to support the European perspectives of the Western Balkans.
And how much do you feel that the European Union as it stands, you talked about cohesion and standing together, are they united on those principles of getting to know each other better, connecting more?
Of course, and there are a lot of financial instruments, the role of European Investment Bank, the role of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, they play a very important role. This so-called Juncker plan, which provides a lot of money, it is 500 billion, as it was said, euro for interconnectivity in Europe.
And finally, 6 months, it's not very long to achieve a great deal. I know that you've worked in groups of 3 when the European Council has its sort of semesters, as it were. You've said the priorities are, but you already admitted you probably can't do all of them. What's the most important that you hope you can close the chapter on, if you like?
First, we took over from Estonia 130 dossier, and it takes more than 18 months in order to close one or another dossier, and another 30 new dossier will be added during the Bulgarian presidency. We work very hard to close different dossiers, but for us it is very important the cohesion in agriculture. It is very important, of course, this is the main priority, the Western Balkans, the digital economy, also youth employment, which is also one of the priorities and one of the main issues which should be solved at the European level.
And that was His Excellency Christo Georgiev, the Ambassador of the Republic of Bulgaria in Cyprus, who gave a presentation of the priorities for Bulgaria's presidency of the European Council. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.